Good evening, and welcome to the Hennepin County Attorney Candidate Forum. My name is Florence Sprague. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Roseville area, and am not a resident of Hennepin County. I'm pleased to be moderating the forum this evening, but since I live in Ramsey County, love them or hate them, I don't get to vote on them. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization with a long history of providing unbiased candidate and issue information that is widely used by voters regardless of their political beliefs. This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters Golden Valley, League of Women Voters Minneapolis, and 8 other Hennepin County leagues, and the Hennepin County Bar Association. All views expressed are those of the candidates and not those of the league or the co-sponsors. Neither the League of Women Voters nor its co-sponsors endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. We're holding this forum for voters to hear from the candidates and to compare their ideas. This forum is being held in front of a live audience at Golden Valley City Hall and is being live streamed. This is a forum, not a debate. Candidates will all be asked the same questions, to which they will respond directly to the audience, not to each other. The recording of this forum will be available in its entirety after the forum and will have a closed caption option available in multiple languages. Thank you to CCX Media for the production and recording of this event. We ask that campaign buttons and t-shirts are not worn in this room, and that no signs or literature be distributed during this event. It can be outside the room, but not during. Please remain as quiet as possible while the candidates are speaking so that everyone can hear the discussion. We also ask that you hold your applause until the end of the forum so that the candidates will have the maximum time to respond to your questions. Finally, one last reminder, silence all electronic devices. Hennepin County is Minnesota's most populous county, home to roughly 1.3 million residents, representing more than 21% of Minnesota's population. Spanning 607 square miles, it includes Minneapolis, the county seat and the state's largest city, and 44 surrounding suburban cities and rural areas. The Hennepin County Attorney sets policies and priorities for prosecuting criminal cases, oversees child protection and child support cases, and provides legal advice and representation to the county government. All candidates on the ballot were invited to the forum, and all are with us this evening. They are seated in alphabetical order to my right. So I'm starting on the far end. Anders Folk, Cedric Frazier, Diane Krenz, Hao Wen, and Matt Pelican. We thank the candidates in advance for engaging in a respectful and civil discourse. We have timekeepers sitting in the front row so that each candidate has the same amount of time to respond to the questions. Following the opening statements of 1.5 minutes, each candidate will have up to 1 minute to answer each question and 1 minute to make a closing statement. The timekeeper will hold up a card when there are 15 seconds remaining and a stop card when time is up. We ask that the candidate finish their sentence and stop. We expect this forum to last about 90 minutes. The public was encouraged to submit questions online in advance, and I have a wonderful list of a variety of topics. During the forum, we will take written questions from the audience up until 8 o'clock and attempt to get some of them in as well. If you don't get your, back up. A volunteer will gather questions and hand them to our question facilitators and then to me, the moderator. We ask that questions be clear, pertinent to the issues at hand, within the scope of the office, and made in the form of a question, not a statement. Questions are carefully reviewed, rewritten when necessary to make sure that they are directed to all candidates, forward-looking, not biased, and not personal. We look for a balance of topics that affect all of us, both locally and in the country as a whole. To To cover as many topics as possible, we will limit the number of questions in each category. We may consolidate questions on the same general topic. If your question does not get addressed, please follow up with the candidates after the forum. Finally, all submitted questions are the property of legal women voters of Golden Valley. We will begin with the candidates' opening statements and ask that they address the question, why are you running for Hennepin County Attorney? And what are your qualifications? Each candidate will have up to 1.5 minutes, and they will respond at this time in alphabetical order. So we will begin with Anders Folk.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you to the League for hosting this, to the Hennepin County Bar Association, for everybody for showing up tonight. My name is Anders Folk. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I grew up in Hopkins. I'm a University of Minnesota undergrad and law school graduate, and during law school I joined the Marine Corps. I wanted to serve my country and started doing that in law school. During law school, I also started my career in criminal justice, working at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office in its juvenile division under Amy Klobuchar. After graduating, my first job was as a military lawyer, both as a prosecutor and a defense lawyer, and I then was lucky enough to come back home as a federal prosecutor, where I investigated and prosecuted any number of cases, from fraud to organized crime to gun crime and everything in between. I returned to the U.S. Attorney's Office later in my career in a leadership position and was the acting U.S. Attorney early in the Biden administration, and I'm proud of the fact that I signed the indictment charging Derek Chauvin with violating George Floyd's civil rights in that capacity. After I stepped down as acting U.S. Attorney, I worked in Washington, D.C. for the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Lisa Monaco, and Merrick Garland on some of the Department of Justice's most sensitive and important matters. I'm running for Hennepin County Attorney to make Hennepin County safe for everyone and to bring my experience over the course of my career to the office. I couldn't be more excited about the role, and I couldn't be more excited to talk to you all tonight about my priorities. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you. Next response from Cedric Frazier.
Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this panel on. My name is Cedric Frazier. To some of you, I am a legislator. To others, I'm a labor attorney. To my 3 daughters, I'm a father, and to my 2 grandboys, I'm Pawpaw. But to everyone here, I am the DFL endorsed candidate for Hennepin County Attorney. I sit before you today proud of these accolades, but also cognizant of where I come from. I grew up in a neighborhood called Englewood on the south side of Chicago. Everyone in my neighborhood was poor, and gun violence was a daily occurrence. After my mother passed away, I moved to Minnesota to attend college and play football. I became the first person in my family to graduate from college, the first one to earn a master's degree, and the first one to earn a law degree. There were no roadmaps, though, but along the way, people invested in me. Minnesotans invested in me. I became a public defender and then legal counsel with Minneapolis Public Schools. From there, I became a labor attorney with Education Minnesota, our state's largest labor union. I served on the New Hope City Council and then as a 3-term state representative leading on public safety and judicial policy issues at the Capitol. I am proud to be the only labor-endorsed candidate in this race, the only candidate endorsed by Attorney General Keith Ellison, and new today endorsed by U.S. Senator Tina Smith. My vision is simple. No one is above the law, and no one is beneath the protections either. My combination of lived and professional experience will allow me to create a system where accountability applies equally to everyone. If harm is done on the corner of the block, there must be accountability. If harm is done from a corner office, there must be accountability. No one is above the law, not Donald Trump, not federal agents, and I'm here to work for the people.
Thank you. The next opening statement from Diane Krentz.
Well, I'm hoping the microphone works because it's on red.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't know I had to push something. I'm Diane Krenz, and I'm running to return the Hennepin County Attorney's Office to its one core mission, the main core mission that everyone thinks about, which is protecting public safety by holding violent and repeat offenders accountable while getting justice for all the victims here in Hennepin County. I've prosecuted crime in Hennepin County for over 40 years. I learned to prosecute cases when I started as a law clerk in 1983 in the appellate division and read people's transcripts on how to do trials. And I continued up through April of 2025 when I left the office after leading the fraud team. I've prosecuted almost every kind of case that's on the books. I was a leader in the office, whether it was a person, whether it was mentoring other people, whether it was being in union leadership, because I did that for 30 years, and whether it was answering questions from cops who wanted to know how to handle a case, whether it was a good case or a bad case. I know Hennepin County better than any of the other candidates that are sitting here. I'm the only person who's prosecuted a case in Hennepin County. And I'm the best candidate to put this county attorney's office back on its track by following the law and the evidence for a safer Hennepin County.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you. The next opening statement from Hao Wen.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Hao Wen, and I'm humbly asking for your support. I'm a refugee. I'm an immigrant. The voice that you hear is a voice given to me by an English as a second language teacher. The body that you see is because of EBT and food stamps. I am a career prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor for 16 years, handling cases from auto theft to sexual assault to murder and everything in between. I sit before you, the division director of the second largest prosecution unit in the state, Ramsey County. I also supervise attorneys, hire attorneys, support people, and train people. I am a prior police officer. During college, I put myself through as a correctional officer. I'm running because I believe that now more than ever, we need experience at the table at the law enforcement level, the refugee level, the immigrant level, and also the managerial level of a county attorney's office. I care deeply about Hennepin County and its public safety, but also its fairness. I have had a brother in deportation hearings. I'm a proud father of an LGBTQ trans kid. I volunteer for Asian Women's United of Domestic Assault, where we run domestic assault shelters in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Been the chair of that for 10 years. I sit on the Children's Hospital Board, where we focus on gender-affirming care and health care for all. I am running right now because more than ever, we need to get back to the work of making sure that we don't have to choose between public safety and fairness, because we can have both. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final opening statement will be from Matt Pelican.
Hi, good evening. My name's Matt Pelican. I think my mic's on. I've been litigating cases for 15 years, so I'm pretty good at pushing buttons. Just ask my husband. He's not here. But he is an immigrant. And the question is, why are we running? And why do we believe that we should be the next Hennepin County Attorney? And I'm running because I believe we have to have safety and justice. Too often they're presented as alternatives or even competing values, but you can't have one without the other. We have to make sure that Hennepin County is a thriving, progressive, just community, but that means it has to be a safe community. And public safety is a lost cause without justice in the system. I'm the only candidate in this race who's credibly running from outside the establishment, because one of the themes and one of the things that we have seen is an establishment that has broken trust between the people and the system that is designed to protect them. And it's not going to be that failed establishment or a failed vision for public safety that restores trust and restores safety and justice in our community. It's going to be a new path forward, and it's going to be ideas from outside that system. This has been the most difficult year in my life in Minnesota, and accountability for Metro Surge and what happened to us is one of the primary things that the next county attorney is going to have to deal with. But these are going to be hard cases. They will require experience and judgment and independence. And I believe I credibly have that combination to the best way to help Hennepin County. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the opening remarks. Now we'll go into the questions that were submitted online ahead of time. And your response time is 1 minute. And as I mentioned before, this will be sort of randomly mixed up. They used a random number generator. And the goal is that you will all get to be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, the same number of times if the questions go on long enough.
Bingo.
And you won't always be answering after the same person. So that's why they randomize them. So the first one, the responses will begin with Matt Pelican. And we will start with the topic that generated the most questions from the public, and that's gun violence. Gun violence affects communities in many ways, including homicide, suicide, domestic violence, and accidental shootings. What do you see as the most effective strategies for reducing gun violence in Hennepin County, and why?
This issue is personal to me, 8 years ago, I ran for Attorney General because we had an A+ rated NRA Attorney General, and I didn't think that was acceptable in a progressive state. In January, I quit my law firm of 10 years because it was representing one of the agents involved in the ICE shootings. And since then, I've devoted my time to working on gun violence prevention, partnering with city and county attorneys around the country and some of the leading nonprofits to find ways to bring accountability to the gun industry. Last summer, I witnessed a 14-year-old boy gunned down outside of the Federal Reserve. This issue is personal, and it's been a lifelong cause of mine. It's one where progressives need to get serious about prosecuting and holding the perpetrators of gun violence accountable. 2 years ago, there was a man arrested with an illegal machine gun. He was released on a technicality, and 2 days later shot up a high school graduation. We cannot be serious about gun violence if we are not serious about prosecuting the criminals who are perpetrating in our community. It'll be one of the animating causes of my tenure as Hennepin County Attorney.
Thank you. Next response from Diane Krentz.
Well, just like Matt, I agree we need to enforce the laws that we have, and part of that means that we reverse the policy of not charging cases that come out of traffic stops by suburban police officers. I've talked to several police officers recently who've told me of cases where they've not only gotten huge amounts of drugs, but they've gotten guns out, and those cases are not being charged. We also have to make sure that we, with felons who are possessing firearms, people who are not supposed to have them, that we are asking for the maximum sentence and the statutory sentence, which is 60 months in prison. We have to get serious about that as well. I agree with Matt completely, and we have to make sure that we are also following up on the cases where there have been shootings without a death to get those guns as well.
Thank you. Mic's on now. Please speak more closer to the mic. That's for everyone. They're having trouble hearing us. So if we can all stay close to our mics. Next response will be from Anders Folk.
Thank you. Gun violence is a scourge, and I think there's both a proactive and a reactive element to how we really can best address gun violence. The proactive side, which is where I always like to start as kind of an eternal optimist, is that we need to do educating of our communities to basically help our folks who are out there understand what the dangers of gun violence are and how they can prevent them, whether that is talking to at-risk communities, whether it is educating our law enforcement officials to say, look, domestic violence victims, by way of example, are often at extreme risk because of gun violence. What are the signs to look for? How can we prevent that from happening in the future? Talking to our educators about risk signs so that they can do their best to protect their students from not only other students possessing firearms, but how they can talk to their students about being safe at home. So the proactive piece is incredibly important. The reactive piece, we need to do enforcement in a strategic and effective way. I've spent my whole career doing that, and I'm excited to bring that to the county attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response, Cedric Frazier.
Thank you. This is also personal for me. I mentioned in my opening much gun violence in my community. Recently lost Speaker Melissa Hortman to gun violence. Also, we've had the Annunciation shooting. We worked very hard at the legislature this past session to try to get things done on gun violence. But I can tell you, in my career, I was the lead author for our Extreme Risk Protection Order, which is our version of the red flag law here in our state. And that legislation has saved lives. We got the data and the receipts to prove that. I will continue to work in those spaces to do that. I also carry legislation to provide more resources for local law enforcement in cities to go after and treat non-fatal shootings just as they do homicides. That way we can disrupt violence and disrupt the continued cycle of gun violence. I will continue to work toward those things. I am very much an advocate against gun violence, and I want to make sure that we have the safest community possible, and I will continue to maintain the work that I've been doing as a legislator. I will bring that energy to the county attorney's office as well.
Thank you. And the final response on this question from Hao Wen.
As Division Director of Ramsey County, in Ramsey County, we have a great clearance rate for murder cases. But what we realized that there were non-fatal shootings, meaning that if someone gets shot, but they don't die, that law enforcement was not investigating that to the level that it should be if it was a completed murder. So we collaborated, we got them together, we built a team, and we've been able to take non-fatal shooting in terms of the clearance rates from 33% up to 67% clearance rate. And it's a really wonderful program that has saved lives. It's so wonderful that Hennepin County right now is trying to mimic it. We also went to the legislator and told everyone about the program because we shouldn't be hiding and coveting. We should be sharing so everyone is safe. I am the person at the table who's actually doing the work. I'm not talking about what I will do or what has been done. I'm doing it right now. I also sued Glock with Attorney Keith General Ellison because they made their guns so easily equipped to make them zip guns. I'm a person who's doing the work, and I have the proof to do it, and I'll be doing it in Hennepin County. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, responses will begin with how, when, and remember, everybody, mics up.
Gotta really get in there. Put it in.
Okay. What is your vision for the relationship between the county attorney's office, local law enforcement, and the county sheriff?
I'm endorsed by Sheriff DeWanna Witt, and I'm proud to have that endorsement. I'm a prior police officer, and I know to do the work. I've investigated murder cases as a cop. I've prosecuted murder cases as a prosecutor. Just because, though, I was a prior police officer, and just because the sheriff has endorsed me, does not mean that if someone betrays our trust, I will not prosecute them. Ramsey County is the first county where we prosecuted an officer in the state for the killing of Philando Castile and Officer Yanez. For me, as a person of color, as a person of minority status, I understand what it's like to be at the boot of law enforcement. But I also understand that we need to work and collaborate with our law enforcement, because if we ignore them, then all of us suffer with regard to public safety. I have a demonstrated history of being at the table with law enforcement and doing the work to make sure that at the end of the day, eagles are left at the door and the work is done. So for me, I have a demonstrated history of collaborating, working with law enforcement, but also holding them accountable when appropriate. And I have no problem doing that as the next Hennepin County Attorney.
Thank you. The next response on this question is from Matt Pelican.
I think this is a key issue where the political camps have failed the public by pulling us further apart. I think most people agree, actually, on this issue, which you wouldn't see in some of the talking points. I think police officers are good and deserve our support when all they're trying to do is keep us safe, but when they break the law or break trust, they need to be held accountable just like everyone else. It's actually pretty simple, but our politics makes that a lot more complicated. For me, it was a clarifying moment when the shooting occurred at the Federal Reserve. My family and I watched last summer. When the police showed up, there wasn't a lot of nuance. I was glad. I was happy. I believe law enforcement is an essential part of public safety in our community, but there has to be, with that trust, accountability. And that is an area where we have fallen down. As Cedric has pointed out, the explosion of anger after the murder of George Floyd wasn't just the murder, it's when the county attorney dragged his feet in bringing charges. There has to be accountability for law enforcement while we support the important work that they do.
Thank you. Next response to this question, Cedric Fraser.
Thank you. No surprises when communicating. That's the number one way of operating when you're working with critical partners in our public safety system. That's what you're going to get from me. Continued communication, open with transparency, and no surprises. We may not agree all the time, but we're going to work together because that's what's best for the county, that's what's best for the residents of Hennepin County. I've demonstrated that relationship for over the decade that I've been in public service, first as a city council member overseeing the budget, along with my council colleagues for our public safety department and working closely with our chiefs and with our line officers, and also as a state representative being vice chair of the public safety committee overseeing the state budgets for funding of public safety and working closely with the association leads and the lobbyists for law enforcement associations. I will maintain those relationships, lean into them deeply to make sure that we're working together when I'm the next Hennepin County Attorney.
Thank you. And the final response, no, there's two more. The next response is Anders Folk.
Thank you. You know, I think over the last 4 years, we've seen a county attorney's office that has failed to collaborate and be a good team player with its law enforcement partners. And I think it's critically important for the county attorney to turn that relationship around, so I'm committed to that. I think I view the role of law enforcement and the county attorney's office to be one of a strategic partnership. And what that means is you set strategy together, you set goals together, and you work towards those goals together. I have extraordinarily high expectations for law enforcement. I will hold them to the same standards I hold myself and my office to, and I will expect them to perform at their best. We all deserve and want good constitutional policing all the time, and the county attorney should set that example every day. I think what that means in practice is that, again, we have a strategic partnership where the county attorney's office demands excellence every day. The police hopefully meet it, and when they don't, they'll hear about it from me, and that's how I'm going to run the county attorney's office with regard to our law enforcement partners every day.
Thank you. And the final response on this question from Diane Krentz.
Well, I'll repeat it again. I'm the only person here who's worked with every police department in Hennepin County. My first act as county attorney would be to have a conversation with every police department, the sheriff's office, and any state agencies that are law enforcement to talk about relationships moving forward. I'll agree with Anders. Those relationships have been broken in the last 3 years. Since I have been on the campaign trail, I can't tell you the number of retired police officers who have now reached out to me to help me, to talk to me about things that they've seen, and even some active police officers who have reached out to me to ask that if I'm elected, I will change a number of the things and the number of the policies that the current county attorney has, so that they will feel supported, they will get the training that they need, and that they will get the help from the office, because they sometimes call us and say, what do we do?
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, Diane gets to go first. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office, at over 500 staff, is the largest public law office in the state. What experience and ideas do you bring to run this large office, and what changes would you propose making?
Boy, only a minute. Okay. Well, my experience is having been there as long as I have. I worked for 4 different elected county attorneys, and I have seen what's worked and what has not worked. I think there needs to be some prioritization, of things in the office. I know that our victim advocacy staff needs support, and they need to have some reassurance that they are supported by the elected county attorney. I think that there are certainly areas where I would decrease the number of attorneys that are needed for certain areas, and I would I would move people around so that it's more effectively used. I know that the office has been running all kinds of certain clinics, and I don't think that that's a good use of the staff time, because staff is incredibly overworked. These people have enormous caseloads, and they need help for that.
Thank you. Next response from Anders Folk.
Thank you. Yeah, with 500 employees and an annual budget that's creeping closer to almost $100 million a year, this is the largest public law office in Minnesota. It is a significant enterprise. And so when I look at that office, first of all, I will rely on my experience running a public law office as the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, use my experience from the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. And frankly, I was lucky enough to kind of learn how to lead in the Marine Corps, and those are all experiences that I'll bring to bear on this office. The county attorney is not only the chief prosecutor for the county, it's also essentially general counsel to the county government, which is a $3 billion enterprise. That is a significant responsibility. You are providing counsel, legal counsel, to this gigantic government enterprise. And I think the thing that for me is the overarching concern is the lawyers in the office are well trained, the lawyers in the office are experienced leaders and are led by an experienced leader, and the lawyers in the office are empowered to make decisions every day, because you can't micromanage an office of that size. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response from Hao Wynn.
I would bring the non-fatal shooting success that I've led in Ramsey County to Hennepin. We need to make sure we get gun violence back down. Gun violence is across the board up. Violence across Hennepin County in terms of call volumes have gone up. I've been able to also focus on sexual violence and assault of women. So for example, in Ramsey County, we've been thinking about the fact that women who are prostituted shouldn't be the people that we focus on. We should focus on the Johns. So we've done this program where we call it Start by Believing. We go after the people who are victimizing women and who are hurting them and trafficking them. And we've gotten great success. I would bring that over there. Also, the fact of the Hennepin County, the chief job of the prosecutor is to prosecute, is to hold people accountable. And for the longest time, I think in this last tenure, we haven't done that. We need to be able to still hold people accountable who do the work of the criminal justice system. And frankly, with auto theft as well as carjackings, those have gone up. And we've been able to reduce those in Ramsey County at a nationwide level. I'd bring that to Hennepin County.
Thank you. Next response from Matt Pelican.
In an almost 30-year career, I have spent it in a series of leadership positions. Going all the way back to St. Olaf College, I took a moribund college Democrat chapter, and as a college freshman turned into the largest college Democrat chapter in the country. In 2016, I oversaw the voter protection operation for Hillary Clinton in Ohio, where we managed almost 300 attorneys statewide to ensure we were protecting the right to vote. I was editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Law Review, managing dozens of law students. That's a history of leadership and experience. There's also judgment. Say whatever you think about Mary Moriarty, some of the people working in that office have come to me and said they would love to have a conversation with her about her prosecution philosophy. That's no way to run an office. You have to lead with transparency and clarity. And that is a history that I've had over, again, almost 30 years of leadership, and I would ensure we treat the people in that office with the respect and transparency that all professionals deserve.
Thank you. And the final response on this question from Cedric Frazier.
Thank you. I'll go back to when I was in grad school in Mankato. I was a co-founder and co-president of an NAACP chapter. The importance of it was the only college chapter in the state, but it was the chapter for that community. My engagement with the community to get buy-in, to push forward and fight for social justice and racial equity within that community is vital. And I say that because I'm getting buy-in from the community. I'm getting buy-in from individuals I don't have any control over. But they're buying into the mission, they're buying into the vision of what it could be to create a better community. I've led that way my entire career as a city council member for the city of New Hope and as a state representative. I currently am the co-chair of the Ways and Means Committee, that is the finance committee for the state of Minnesota. So I'm bringing that budgetary experience I'll be bringing that budgetary experience to the county attorney's office. I believe in transparency, and I believe in creating a work environment that everybody can be proud to come to work every day and tell people that they work for the county attorney's office and never be afraid to say that. And I am honored to have the endorsement of the union that represents all the staff in that office. And again, I think that goes to the leadership that I have a proven record of.
Thank you. Okay, for the next question, responses will begin with Cedric Frazier. There seems to be a pattern. Okay, let's get a little more granular on this one. The public knows that many cases are resolved by plea bargain. What oversight would you exercise to ensure consistency and fairness?
Thank you. I think you have to put in some general policies to set the standard and the basis for how you're going to charge cases, how you're going to pursue those cases through litigation, and what you're going to offer up if you get through litigation and offer up for sentencing. I will make that clear. Some of the conversations I've had with attorneys in the office is that there seems to be a bit of lack of clarity coming from some of those situations. So I want to be clear. One of my first goals in the first 6 months is to go in, survey staff within the office, find out where there's tension, find out where there's issues that need to be addressed, and then work as hard as I can in a collaborative fashion with those staff members to make sure we resolve those issues. We can't have a great office, we can't have a great product for the community if we don't have a great work environment for the workers. That will be one of my main focuses.
Thank you. Next response from Hao Wen.
On my way here today, I was on the phone triaging a homicide resolution. Every single homicide resolution that happens in Ramsey County goes through me. And then I make sure that we follow the law, that victims' voices are upheld in court, and that we make sure that we have the best outcome possible. Every single gun departure, because when people possess guns or they use them illegally, there are statutory mandates of their sentences. Every departure has to be approved and goes through me. I am the candidate who right now is doing that work. I am the one who is managing a division of more than 40-some prosecutors and appellate attorneys, paralegals, legal secretaries. I sit on the Violent Crime Task Force, also with law enforcement. All of us work in conjunction to make sure that people don't just go and do whatever they feel like they're doing that day. So I am the one with my finger on the pulse and the demonstrated work, and I'll bring that to Hennepin County.
Thank you. Next response from Matt Pelican.
It's been mentioned about the size of that office. It's too big to have every single case hit the desk of the county attorney. How many people in this room are familiar with the car keying incident where someone keyed a Tesla and got off in what might have been a politically charged situation? The same week, the office charged a young black woman with a felony who had no prior record. You dig into that, and what happened is the incumbent threw out the written protocols on making charging decisions. And it leads to really inconsistent results in justice and the application of a fair justice system. Everyone has to be equal under the law. You have to have transparency, and you have to have written policies. There's no way that you can manage an office of 500 people personally. You have to do it through clear policies, and that applies to plea bargains as well.
Thank you. Next response from Diane Krentz.
Well, I hate to agree with Matt again, but I will. You do have to have very clear policies, and during the time that I worked there, we did have clear policies. I, in fact, wrote a letter to the Star Tribune complaining about how Ms. Moriarty handled that case with the keyed Teslas because it was a political decision. It had nothing to do with what was right, and it caused a ripple effect within that office of attorneys calling and complaining because they had clients who had thefts that were under the same amount or less, and they had not gotten that offer. So in order to avoid those sorts of things, you do have to have policies, and I don't need to go and interview anybody to find out where the tension is. I know where the tensions are already. And it's very easy. We have a sentencing guidelines system, and we will follow the sentencing guidelines, and we will also have policies that people understand.
Thank you. And the final response in this question, Anders Folk.
Yeah, thank you. So plea bargains are a huge part of the criminal justice system, and it's critical that the policies in that office are transparent to the public and that they are consistently enforced. And the reason the transparency matters is so that judges and defense lawyers and probation officers and all the different people who are part of the criminal justice system understand the baseline way that a case will be handled. So that's critical. Two, you have to apply them consistently because nobody should ever feel like they're getting a different deal because of who they are, because of who their lawyer is, because of what neighborhood they came from, because they're rich, they're poor, whatever. And so that consistency is the second part that's so critical. One of the things that's most disappointing as a crime victim is if you feel like your case isn't being treated fairly, and one of the reasons many crime victims don't feel like their case is being treated fairly is if they're being treated differently than a similarly situated defendant. I'll use the same plans I use at the U.S. Attorney's Office to put in place clear, transparent policies, and we will manage to them every day.
Thank you. Once again, Anders will get to go first on the next question.
It's a trend.
I didn't make up the numbers, you know. So. But this is in the same vein, but looking specifically at racial disparities. There are ongoing concerns about racial disparities in the prosecution of cases, including those involving juveniles. What approach will you use to reduce racial disparities in charging, plea deals, and sentencing recommendations?
I think the critical issue to addressing racial disparities is, first of all, being very upfront about the fact that they exist and we need to do everything we can to reduce them. Second, I think that with racial disparities, one of the things we want to focus on are how can we provide off-ramps to what I will call kind of traditional criminal justice outcomes in a way that allows people to not have kind of sometimes the crippling consequences of a criminal conviction. So I'm committed to work that I did as a federal prosecutor, diversion, restorative justice, programs that give people an opportunity to get through the criminal justice system without having a conviction that can so dreadfully impact their lives, and where we've seen racial disparities for a long time. I also think part of racial disparities in the justice system is a byproduct of sometimes having offices not having a diverse group of leaders in that office. And my experience at the U.S. Attorney's Office has been you create a good pipeline to bring in a diverse management team, and that's another part of the solution to ensuring we're doing everything we can to reduce racial disparities in the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response on this question, Matt Pelican.
It's a foundational aspect of our democracy that everyone is equal under the law. And when a charging decision comes to the office, everyone has to be treated equally, no matter who they are, whether they are in a boardroom or on a street corner, or they wear a badge. I think another mistake that office did was put in writing a policy that they will take race into account when making charging decisions. That is the wrong approach. You have to treat everyone fairly and equally. You have to recognize that racial disparities exist in the system. It's one reason justice is one of the two foundational elements of my campaign. But one of the ways that you do that is, as Anders mentioned, making sure that, as what I call is, you go upstream and you go downstream. Get ahead of the charging decision and get into communities to interrupt cycles of violence before they occur. Go downstream and make sure that people are getting diversion and treatment and rehabilitation so that if they've come through the system, they're not back on the street committing crimes again, but they're back on their feet becoming full citizens. And that's the best way to address disparity, not introducing more bias.
Thank you. Next response from Hao Wen.
So, with regard to racial disparities, in St. Paul, we had heard from the community that black and brown folks were being pulled over 4 times the rate of their white counterparts. They were being searched 10 times the rate of their white counterparts. And law enforcement was finding no less than more than 1% of drugs or guns. That clearly was a problem. But also, you need to work with law enforcement and collaborate with them. So for a year straight, after writing 26 versions of a policy and engaging law enforcement, I was able to, at the end of the year, get all law enforcement to stand with us, and we initiated a traffic stop policy. And we were able to reduce those racial disparities by more than half. And public safety has not suffered at all. And that takes real work, but it has real outcomes. With regard to juvenile reform, in Ramsey, we have a program called Reimagining Youth Justice, where we share our power, but we also make sure people are safe. And we've been able to reduce racial disparities and youth recidivism by more than 53%. I'm proud of that work, and it's work that I can do in Hennepin County.
Thank you. Next response from Diane Krantz.
I was always brought into the office and told never to look at what the race of the person was. And I think that is the best, whether it's the defendant or the victim. And that is what I would want, is a colorblind system of doing this. And I think intervening in juvenile cases is a place where we can stop some of the racial disparities. What I have observed in my lived experience as a prosecutor is that almost all of my victims have been people of color. And that's a part that's really hard to look at, too. If I've done anywhere from 20 to 50 to 60 homicides, and out of all of those, I've had 3 white victims. So we can't look at the fact that there's too many black people in prison, and it's sad to see that. The problem becomes what you still have to serve those victims and get justice for the victim, and if it's a person of color who committed the crime, you still have to hold them accountable.
Thank you. And the final response on this question, Cedric Fraser.
Thank you. I do think we have to look at this. This is a systemic issue, and it's an issue that's pervasive throughout this country. It's not just here in Hennepin County, not just here in Minnesota. When you look at the data of who's being prosecuted, who's coming through that system, who's having contact with that system, there's some very root cause things to that, and they're very systemic. One of the first meetings, and to that point, one of the first meetings I had was with a group of principals from Minneapolis Public Schools. It's more like a reunion to me because I used to work with those folks, but the conversation was about building collaborative partnerships to identify where we see kids going down the wrong path to make sure we intervene and prevent them and turn them back to the right path. That's important for me because of how diverse our high schools are. And that diversity is a way, because of that diversity, we can really have a real impact by building those relationships and those partnerships. And in those conversations, we talked about accountability. Yeah, we're going to have accountability. That is not something we're going to run away from, because that is also a way to disrupt some of the harm that has been done in the community. But we're also going to really focus on the preventative piece and the rehabilitative piece. I think as a country, as a society, we do a great job with the punitive pieces. We don't always do a great job with investing and taking care of the rehabilitative pieces.
Thank you. And staying with our pattern, he gets to go first on the next one.
Very random.
There you go.
We've been talking a lot about the defendants, and now there's a question that says, what will you do to ensure justice for families of crime victims?
I want to start a victim advisory board. Many of the conversations that I've had with folks, what they've said to me is that we feel like in most cases our case is just a number to be processed. We're not treated with respect and dignity and humanity. We're not constantly communicated with to know where the case is and is postured procedurally, or sometimes we get calls about the outcome of how the case is going to resolve, and we've never had that conversation to say if we're okay with that or have input to guide that. A victim advisory board where we can have that back and forth conversation almost in real time, and then we can show those victims and those survivors in the community that we're actually enacting those in practice and in policy. I think it's vitally important. I think it's a great way to build trust, and that's the lack of mistrust that's been around for decades, and we want to make sure we're working hard to build that trust in the community.
Thank you. Next response from Diane Krantz.
Well, the office already has a very full victim witness staff. What's been happening is that they are not being told in advance what is going to happen in a case, and the victims are being told sometimes when they get into the courtroom, and victims' voices are not being listened to. There has been a top-down structure in the current county attorney's office where decisions are made even after the victims have been told something is going to happen with a case. Additionally, if a victim has an objection, they certainly have a right to say something. They don't guide and tell us what to do with a case, but they have the right to express their opinion about things, and that is not happening. I would reinforce our victim witness staff and make sure they're continuing with the job that they had done for many years before, but it's been disrupted in the last 4 years.
Thank you. Next response from Anders Folk.
Thank you. I think the county attorney's office, frankly, can do better with how it's handling victims. And I've always been taught, and I've always employed as a leader, as a prosecutor, a victim-centered approach to prosecutions, which means that crime victims are brought in early, brought in often, and are centered in that case from the very beginning. It's one of the reasons that we rolled out what we're calling a Victims' Bill of Rights as part of our campaign. And we've rolled out 100 days of action, and one of the things we're going to do in that first 100 days as county attorney is roll out a Victims' Bill of Rights to ensure victims understand that they are a valued part of the criminal justice process. People's trust in our system of criminal justice revolves around a lot of different things, but one that is absolutely critical is ensuring that victims and their family members believe that they are at least as important as anybody else who's involved in the criminal justice system, and that they know they are being heard, and they can expect that if I'm their county attorney.
Thank you. Next response, How Wen.
Diane's correct. There's a robust victim advocate unit. There's already a state statute that says what victims' rights are, 6011A. We've talked a lot about when the victims have a right to be heard in court, give their input on plea agreements and all of that. As a practitioner, as a lawyer, I've had to engage in that and uphold those rights of victims, and even say, hey, this is the victim. They get to say what I'm doing and what they don't like about what I'm doing. But judge, respect that. Jury, respect that. So can the defense. Hennepin County does not do that well right now. And it's not because they don't have good victim advocates. It's because it is plea by surprise. We've had people standing at that fountain, mothers, fathers, sisters, aunts, saying, what are you doing with my family member who was carjacked and killed? They're going to get probation now without any notice, and they have to find out from the news. That has to stop. So absolutely, we don't need new policies for it. We need to follow the law. And I've been following that law in the courtroom and outside the courtroom and within policies, and I will continue to do that in Hennepin County.
Thank you. And the final response to this question, Matt Pelican.
When you're a private litigator, you have a plaintiff who's been harmed, and you walk into court and you're representing that plaintiff. As Hennepin County Attorney, you're not representing the victim, you're representing the public and the public's interest. The public's interest is enforcing the law and protecting the people of this county and doing it in a just way. Having victims heard is an essential part of that. It's not just for the victim's interest, it's for our interest, to make sure that we have a system that is transparent and fair, and that when bad things happen to the people living in this county, their family members or they themselves have a seat at the table. As many others have said, there's a robust unit in that office now. It just has to be respected. We have to apply the processes that work so that when you're wronged, you can come in and you're heard in that office, that you're not finding out from the news about a plea bargain. The county attorney or the prosecutor is telling it to your face, that you are a valued part of the community. And that's not just because the county attorney is an advocate for the victim, it's an advocate for you and the public, and that's what we deserve.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, guess what? You get to go first.
Not surprised.
Okay. We've had defendants, we've had victims, now we're on to the public. The vast majority of the public has the good fortune to be neither the victim nor the defendant in the criminal system. How would you communicate with the public to keep them informed about goals, results, decision-making?
Sure, although I'm going to challenge the premise of the question a little bit, and it's one of the reasons I'm running for county attorney, because I believe that progressive communities have to be safe, thriving, nice places to live. And the public is impacted by crime even if it's not the victim. Rampant, untreated mental health and drug addiction in our communities affects all of us. Carjackings affect not just the person who's targeted by the carjacking, but the whole neighborhood, living in fear if your car is going to be next. Living in fear for relatives who are in places impacted by crime. So crime and safety affect the whole community. It's not just between a defendant and a crime victim. At the same time, to the question, the county attorney has to communicate clearly and transparently to restore trust. It's really essential. That's why there has to be regularity and transparency in the way the office is working, but it also has to demonstrate that it's fighting for you. Because I believe if the county attorney isn't protecting the people of Hennepin County, no one else is going to do it, and that's essential for communicating to the public.
Thank you. Next response from Diane Krantz.
I'd reinstitute something that has seemed to fall by the wayside in the last few years, is publishing things on websites. The county attorney's office has a pretty good website, and they used to publish results of cases. It seems to have dwindled in the last few years, and I think it's very important that the public know. They may have seen a news story about a homicide or a shooting, that we tell them who's been charged and what the result is. I frankly like what the U.S. Attorney's Office does, although they have significantly fewer cases than we do. But at least on the bigger cases, putting out there the information, a copy of the complaint. One of the things that I would reinstitute as well is we used to have a program where victim, or even the community, could do a victim impact statement. It wasn't required by statute, but the office used to do that, and I would reinstitute that, which is why you want that communication on a website.
Thank you. Next response from Cedric Frazier.
I think I'll kind of go in line with what Diane was saying. A public dashboard. Be very clear, very transparent with reporting out to the public what's happening. Why certain cases are charges, why cases are dismissed, why we may have a departure from a certain case, but being very clear and transparent about why we're making those decisions and how we're making those decisions. I think that kind of data for the community is very important. They don't have to search for it. They don't have to ask for it. They can go directly to the website and see that information. And they can know what the county attorney's office is doing, and they can know how decisions are being made. I mentioned earlier, there's decades of mistrust within these institutions. That clear, transparent way of communicating information is a great way to rebuild some of that trust and allow people to have access to a place where they can get information without having to go to 1,000 different places or wondering where they can get that information from.
Thank you. Next response from Anders Folk.
Thank you. You know, I think the critical thing to communicating with the public is to meet the public where they are, and it's hard to know where they are if you don't ask. And so goal one for me is to actually reach out to our communities and find out how they want to hear about the work we're doing. What I did at the U.S. Attorney's Office was employ what I would call kind of a multifaceted, multiple different ways to communicate with the public, because people get their news differently. And what that means is we're active on social media, broadcasting our cases and the results in a clear, straightforward way. It means at times we're doing press conferences. It means we're bringing in our public safety partners. The thing I'm really excited to launch, and I don't know if the county attorney's office has ever done it before, but is public office hours, where I'm going to make myself available as the county attorney to local media, to larger media, and to the public, and we're going to do it every month, and they get to come in and ask questions. And I can tell you from having done this before, it's hard, but I feel like if you're not willing, able, and comfortable doing that, you probably shouldn't be sitting in the chair as county attorney, and I'm really excited about that opportunity.
Thank you. And the final response on this question from Hao Wen.
And Anders, I swear to God, I didn't steal your answer here, but I agree with that. I wanted to create, and I will create, a public engagement room. Every single week, I will be sitting in a room, and any member of the public can come for the hour and tell me what they think and what I'm doing wrong, what we're doing right. And then we will also make sure that we mark those and keep minutes for those meetings, and we follow up. We also have to have data dashboards. And, data dashboards can do kind of whatever you put the numbers into. But I articulate that we need to make the raw numbers. What are the raw numbers? So you can take a look at that so we don't manipulate those and tell the public what they think they should see. I think we need to have real, transparent numbers. We also need to make sure that we go to the public, right? So Hennepin County is more than Minneapolis. Right? So we got to go into all the other town halls, and I will make sure that I am in every town hall and every city hall monthly, so we can engage people, and we have to answer to what we're doing. So that's what my approach would be to transparency and public engagement.
Thank you. Okay. Now we'll changing directions if I can find the
And
right.
surprise, Matt, you're going to go. I won't.
They're going to switch it up, keep us on our toes.
Let's see. Yep, it's Hao.
I knew it.
Y'all can't see it, but Florence has a very complicated chart here. She's doing a remarkable job. It's like
Okay, this is a little different. Should opioid addiction be treated as a public health issue, a criminal justice issue, or both? And how does that shape your charging decisions?
It's for sure a public health issue, right? And then in terms of criminal, I think it's a real problem to prosecute addiction, right? As a young probation officer, as a police officer, and a career prosecutor, I have learned that no one wants to be on the side of the street, losing their families, suffering and living really a hard, difficult life. They don't choose that. It's addiction. What we do, though, is we should prosecute the sellers, the people that are putting the drugs into these people's hands, right? Our friends, families, and neighbors. Those are the ones who are suffering. So we charge out third-degree murder cases, cases where if I give you a pill and has fentanyl in it and you die, we go after you, and we make sure you're charged with murder, right? It's called murder in the third degree, and we do that well. I've given statewide trainings on how to complete murder-3 prosecutions. That's what we should do. We should also work with our community to engage housing for our folks who are suffering from that. So I think it's both, and I think anybody who tells you it's one thing is not looking at the problem clearly.
Thank you. Next response, Cedric Fraser.
I think it's absolutely a public health issue. I talked about growing up in Chicago, there was gun violence that was rampant every day, but a lot of that also came from the drug trafficking that was happening in the community. And I know the impact personally of having someone close to you, a family member, that's addicted to drugs, and how it totally changes their behavior, their makeup, and what they do, and some of the actions that they take. So you have to treat that addiction, but you also have to go after the root cause. And the root cause issues are the individuals bringing those drugs into the community as well as the guns into the community that play a part in all of that. So I believe it is those two approaches that you have to do, but the individual and addictions itself, it has to be treated like a public health issue.
Thank you. Next response from Matt Pelican.
It's absolutely both. One of the reasons I'm running is because I think that progressives have turned a blind eye to untreated mental health and addiction issues, and we have to reclaim our public spaces so that our communities are nice places to live. I care about the people on the margins of society a lot, but I care about everyone in our community, and I want our cities to be safe, comfortable, nice places to live. I spent almost 3 years litigating an opioid case against the opioid industry, and I got to know a lot of these heartbreaking stories very personally. It's already been said, no one chooses to live on the street and shoot up. No one chooses to be estranged from their family over a pill or a needle. It's involuntary. It's an addiction. It's heartbreaking. We cannot jail our way out of it, but for some of those people, it will have to be an involuntary solution because they just cannot find their path to treatment. I believe we have to make a safe, clean, no strings attached bed available to everyone in the community, and once we do, we have to step in and reclaim our public spaces.
Thank you. Next response, Diane Krentz.
I think it's very complicated. It is public health issue. It is a prosecution issue. I've seen many people who've been prosecuted for drug use or drug possession who have turned their lives around in drug court and in other places. Sometimes that's what they need. I have a brother who is in recovery, and he got arrested for DWI twice, and it changed his life going to court. And some people need that. I'm not sure that I agree that people don't choose the life that they have. I know that through treatment and NA and AA, people can certainly help themselves. It does not mean, addiction doesn't mean that you don't have any control over what's happening to you. However, I think that we also have to look at ways to treat people when they do come into the system. It isn't an excuse for crime. However, it is something that needs to be treated and taken seriously.
Thank you. And the final response on this one, Anders Folk.
Thanks so much. I think the entire criminal justice system is really a continuum between compassion and consequence. And certain cases require more consequence, and certain cases require more compassion. And you really need experience to kind of figure out where things fall on that spectrum. Opioid addiction is one where there is both a role for compassion and a role for consequence. And there was just a local article in Minneapolis talking about essentially an open-air drug market at 29th and Blaisdell in Minneapolis. And that is an area where we need both compassion and consequence. There are drug addicts who need help, and there are drug dealers who need consequence. And that, I think, is going to be the crux of the conversation about opioid addiction and the folks who are supplying that. We need to do both the compassion and the consequence thing. And I think the easy kind of default is if you have an addiction issue, let's start with a public health compassion response. If you're exploiting this vulnerable community, we need to start with a consequence approach. And I think that's how we need to approach these types of issues, whether it's opioid or other controlled substances across the board.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, Anders, you are not first. Next.
That's incredible.
Wow.
It will be
I broke the
Diane.
matrix.
The day has come.
This is shocking.
Okay. Now, our candidates are all thoughtful people, and so 1 minute already feels like a lightning round, but we're going to do a couple questions now as a lightning round, which means they get a maximum of 30 seconds. So for the timer and the camera person, it's going to be moving even more quickly. As I said, the first one will begin with Diane. Okay. Will you direct the Hennepin County Attorney's Office to pursue prosecution of federal officers committing state crimes in the county?
I'm going to give the lawyer's answer. It depends. I don't know what the evidence is. And if the evidence is there, yes, I would. And if there is insufficient evidence, no, I wouldn't.
Thank you. Next response, Anders Folk.
Any violation of Minnesota law by federal agents needs to be investigated and prosecuted, period. I'm committed to that. I've laid out a federal prosecution task force plan to handle any violations of Minnesota law by federal agents. This is work I've done my whole career, and I will bring that expertise to these investigations and prosecutions.
Thank you. Next response, Matt Pelican.
Yes. Anyone who violates the law has to be held accountable. What happened to our community is outrageous. But these cases are going to be very difficult. I've been doing a lot of research and advising municipalities around the country on this. In the history of what's called the Supremacy Clause immunity, only 4 cases have proceeded to trial. So absolutely we need accountability, but we have to do it smartly, and it's one reason we need an experienced prosecutor and attorney with the right judgment to bring these cases forward.
Thank you. Next, Cedric.
Yes, we will prosecute federal agents that violate law in Hennepin County.
Thank you. And the final one, How Wen.
I am the only candidate right now who is doing that work. I am leading and prosecuting the case where that Hmong gentleman was taken out in his underwear in the middle of the winter. I'm leading that work, and I'm coordinating with law enforcement. I'm the only refugee on this stage who understands right now what that feels like. I'm the only one here who has had a family in deportation hearings because of ICE. So for me, the cases that Hennepin County is working on right now, I will continue that. I also got myself sworn into federal court to make sure that I can continue to do the work. I will not let up until we find the truth and have accountability.
Thank you. Okay, this time we're back to our pattern. So how you're going to be first on the next, and this will again be a lightning round question.
30 seconds, okay.
30 seconds. Is it the job of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office to reduce recidivism?
Absolutely. Our job is to make sure that we seek justice, hold people accountable, but also take care of public safety. And reducing recidivism makes people more safe. So absolutely is our job. The job of the county attorney's office is to prosecute, but also to ensure public safety. So the answer is yes.
Okay, next response, Matt Pelican.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is one thing the office is getting right now. It's one reason we can't just adopt one approach or the other. Mary's made mistakes. She has a data-driven approach, which has cut recidivism among youth offenders almost in half by diversion. We have to keep going. We can't just go back. We have to keep improving and use the things that are working. Absolutely. Every case that doesn't recede to another crime is one fewer crime victim. It's one fewer person who's reclaimed their life and rebuilding it. It's an essential part of the office.
Thank you. Next response, Cedric Frazier.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I believe I'm the candidate with the broad purview that sees the entire board of how all these things intersect and impact. And absolutely, the county attorney should play a role in making sure we reduce recidivism to keep our community safe.
And next response, Anders Folk.
Recidivism is one of these things where I think it again brings into really stark relief the need for both that compassion and consequence part of the criminal justice spectrum. We want to be ensuring that anybody who's involved in the criminal justice system never comes back. It's better for them, it's better for the community, it's better for the public safety. And so the county attorney's office needs to ensure that its charging decisions and how it is resolving cases is with an eye towards doing everything it can do reasonably to reduce recidivism. And so I think that is a critical part of the job.
Thank you. And the final response, Diane Krentz.
I think that it obviously is something that we need to look at. However, sometimes the way to reduce recidivism is to have the person serve a prison sentence, because that's the way to keep them from being back on the street. It is probation's job to work with people, and I think that's very important to keep people from reoffending. But there are some people, I used to prosecute the career offenders, people with 30-plus felony convictions, and the best way to keep them from reoffending was to send them for the statutory maximum.
Thank you. Okay, now we can all exhale. We're going back to a minute.
Oh,
Back to a whole
Lightning.
I was getting ready for lightning round the entire time, the rest of the time.
Well, we could cover more topics, but okay. And this time it's back to form. So Diane's going to be first. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office handles child support and child protection legal matters. What ideas do you have for making the system work better and improve outcomes for Hennepin County's children?
Well, that is a difficult question, and it brings up something that I'm very concerned about if I'm elected, is the change of the law so that children under 13 who commit crimes cannot be taken into the juvenile delinquency system. And it's very concerning because child protection isn't necessarily set up to take care of those kids, some of whom will be violent offenders. So that is one thing that I think will need to be addressed, and I'm working on a plan with some people to present as to what should be done to try to make sure those kids get the services that they need. Child support and some of those other divisions are kind of self-regulating, and I think that it's important work and it needs to be done, and the office needs to be staffed appropriately for some of those areas, which is an issue at this point.
Thank you. Next response from Anders Folk.
I personally, as a lawyer, have seen kind of the really just tragic consequences when our child protection system fails, and when a child dies because of the failure of the system, it is beyond tragedy. It is just absolutely heart-wrenching, and it reflects a system that isn't working to protect our most vulnerable. And to me, the key way we measure is our public safety, is our criminal justice system working, is are we protecting the most vulnerable among us? These are people who do not have a voice. And so I think with the child protection space, what I'd like to see is to bring in a group of our career prosecutors and our career attorneys at the county attorney's office to work with some outside experts and make sure we are doing everything we can for child protection cases and for our child victims, because I think, frankly, my own experience tells me we can do better and we need to do better.
Thank you. Next response, Hao Nguyen.
I have a case recently that comes to mind where child protection came to a house because the grandmother had called and said, hey, I'm really worried about my grandchild. And the mother and the boyfriend aren't doing great because they're using drugs. Child protection got there, they cleared, went home, and a week later, 2 weeks later, that kid was dead. And then the criminal justice system gets involved, and now we're thinking about charging the mother, we're thinking about charging the boyfriend, and then ultimately perhaps the grandmother. None of that is great. Now, somebody needs to be held accountable, but I think people stay away from saying, hey, child protection, we can do better. We have to give them better resources and more resources. We need to treat child protection like they are investigating murder cases. We cannot make sure that we go in and the house looks kind of okay and then we're going to be gone. And then we wait for the bad thing to happen. So we have to invest into the protection of our kids because they are future victims. Absolutely. And that's what my experience tells me. So we cannot look away from it.
Thank you. Next response, Matt Pelican.
I've spent over 10 years providing pro bono legal services to victims of harassment and domestic abuse to obtain orders for protection and harassment restraining orders. Having the legal system step in and protect the most vulnerable, children, families that are going through a hard point, is essential. It's essential to give opportunity to those kids and the families, and making sure that the county attorney's office is taking these matters very seriously. As Hao said, these are cases that can drift into death, serious abuse, lives derailed. We have to take it extremely seriously. It would be an honor to be in that role and partner with Child Protective Services and the legal system to try to protect these families, to try to get them the support they need, the financial resources that they've been ordered and obligated to provide for their kids. All of that is essential to making sure that we have as much opportunity and safety in Hennepin County as possible.
Thank you. And the final response on this question, Cedric Frazier.
This is important. This is one of those situations. We talked earlier about how do we clear racial disparities within our system. I guarantee you, when you look at our child protection system and the kids that are falling between the cracks and the kid is being harmed, it's disproportionately black and brown and poor kids. I guarantee you that when you look at those numbers. And we can do something about that, but it is a resource-intensive issue. What I've worked on as a state legislator is to put more resources into our system so that we can provide programming for situations like that. I will continue to push forward with that, working with our county commissioners to find those resources. One of my top concerns is coming into this role is the impact that the federal government is having on all the resources that they're trying to pull back from states, and the words of Donald Trump, for retribution to starve this state to punish us. And I'm looking forward to fighting back against those things and making sure we have the resources we need for our young people to be successful.
Thank you. Okay, we're back on form, and Cedric will be first on the next one. What role, we sort of alluded to some of this during the lightning round, but what role should the county attorney's office play in cases involving federal immigration enforcement, and how do you balance enforcement with community trust?
I think one of the biggest misnomers that happened during the Operation Metro Surge is that Minnesota as a state was not cooperating with federal entities when they were requesting to know where violent people were. That was absolutely happening. It's been happening for years. I remember having this conversation with Commissioner Snell, the commissioner of the DOC, informing us and walking us through how that process has worked and how that process was working. So that's a big misnomer. There was that type of work going on to remove violent people. By the way, they were already in prison, but to turn those people over to the federal agents. I have committed to not working with the federal government to violate our civil rights or our constitutional rights. I will maintain that commitment. We will do everything we can to make sure that we keep our community safe, but we will not cooperate and facilitate the violation of constitutional civil rights of people here in Hennepin County of Minnesota.
Thank you. Next response, Hao Nguyen.
I think the role of the chief prosecutor is to hold federal agents and all of their counterparts responsible if they hurt our community. That's the role. If they break the law, we prosecute them. We treat them like anybody else who harms anybody else in the community. With regard to sort of having people understand what's going on, that we have to understand that this was an unprecedented time. It was absolutely complete chaos. And there's a lot of good cops out there who are well-trained, well-qualified, who are trying to keep communities safe. But some of the noise here was like, well, law enforcement is part of ICE. That's not true. There was a lot of very well-trained, capable people trying to make sure that there was peace to the chaos and sense to that. And I think one of the biggest confusions was the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff DeWanna Witt is a good sheriff who was doing her best to make sure that our communities were safe. All the police chiefs in our community care every single time about the people in their communities because they live here, they shop here, they raise kids here. The federal agents came here, heard us, and left. But they made us think that we were hurting each other, and that is wrong.
Okay. Next response from Matt Pelican.
In an ordinary situation, you would have a Department of Justice and a federal government that was actually investigating the violations of civil rights and laws that happen here. We're not living in that world, and the Department of Justice under Donald Trump is actively obstructing the investigation into what happened here. Attorney General Ellison and Mary Moriarty have already brought a lawsuit to try to get the information and the discovery they need in some of those cases. In this world, the one we live in, it's going to fall to the next county attorney to carry that case and carry the prosecutions forward. It is an essential part of the duty of that office. I would create a task force dedicated to pursuing these investigations and bringing charges where appropriate. And we would bring in expert volunteer counsel from around the country to assist and add to the capability of that office so that we could also maintain a focus on the prosecutions here. It's a model that Attorney General Ellison used in the prosecution into the murder of George Floyd, and it works, and it is essential for the county attorney to carry that forward.
Thank you. Next response, Diane Krentz.
Could you read the question again so that I get it correct?
I could if I make sure I find the right piece of paper.
Not that I'm buying
Okay,
time.
we are on immigration. Okay. What role should the county attorney's office play in cases involving federal immigration enforcement, and how do you balance enforcement with community trust?
I think there is a role, again, if someone has broken the law, whether it's a federal agent or someone on the street or anyone in those actions, those cases should be investigated. If they can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, they should be charged, and we should go ahead with those. It is kind of difficult in how it's been handled currently because I have great concerns that the current county attorney took evidence in and then turned it over to the BCA for investigation, which leaves that office open to all sorts of allegations of either tampering or hiding evidence. So it is a very, very touchy thing, but I think that when there is something that's provable, the county attorney's office should charge it.
Thank you. And the final response on this question from Anders Folk.
Thank you. I referred to this earlier. Number one, accountability is critical. And so if there are any federal agents who violated Minnesota law during Operation Metro Surge, they need to be held accountable. Period, full stop. The county attorney's office is going to play a role there because the Department of Justice is not at this time, and I don't expect them to. So the county attorney's office needs to do that work and do that work well. The enforcement and the community trust piece is really, I think, the most critical part of this, and that is to say there are some in the community who believe that everything should be prosecuted. There are others who believe nothing should be prosecuted. And so what I think will be critical to ensure we're building that trust in the community and ensuring that the community understands what is being done and why is that the county attorney needs to be reporting out regularly on these cases. These are high-profile cases. These are cases that impact everyone in the county, and I think the county attorney's office is going to owe the public an explanation on every case as to why we're doing this or why we're not.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question before we go to our closing statements. As the topic that brought in the most advanced questions was gun violence, let's go back and wrap up with where we started out. How would you deploy extreme risk protection orders in order to reduce the risk of gun violence? And for the audience, these are legal orders where someone who feels threatened by, say, a partner or someone to have them stay away, that they are, and we begin with Anders.
These extreme risk protection orders are frequently called ERPOs. So ERPOs are a great tool to help disrupt violent crime. They give law enforcement the ability to go into the homes of certain people if a standard is met and remove firearms. Really important. I think that the use of these is critical, and it's something that I think we actually can do more with. I've talked to the assistant county attorney who runs this program. There is exactly one lawyer out of 500 employees in the county attorney's office who does ERPO work. So to me, this is an opportunity for us to do more and do more every day to help use this tool. It's a good tool. It's one of many tools, and I think it's a tool that when we work with law enforcement to really identify community threats and threats to our vulnerable populations, we can use this ERPO law as a way to really increase public safety and drive down often what is domestic violence. And it's going to be a tool that I think if we work with law enforcement, we can really get the full benefit of the law.
Thank you. Next response from Matt Pelican.
You know, gun violence is a very serious issue, and progressives are very worried about it. Lots of people are very worried about it, justifiably. And often the debate is on the availability of dangerous weapons, some illegal weapons. We can't do a lot about that. It's a legislative solution. There is a adverse Supreme Court now, but we can enforce the laws that exist. And it's one of the best, surest things that we can do to address the scourge of gun violence. ERPOs are an essential part of that. Getting illegal guns off the street and holding the criminals using them accountable is another tool available. So in a world where we want to do as much as possible on gun violence and we can't do some of the things we urgently would like to do, enforcing the laws that exist, getting guns out of the hands of dangerous criminals, out of the hands of dangerous people going through a personal crisis is essential, and it's really important that we use every tool available to address gun violence.
Thank you. Next response, How Wynn.
When the ERPO law was passed, it was like mass confusion. Officers are like, can we do this? Can we not? Is this a civil matter? Is this a criminal matter? Who can petition once the family member calls? Also, the law said that if law enforcement goes there, they have to pay for the gun. They have to pay for the storage, and there's not a criminal thing. So it's been very complicated. So what we did was we held trainings with all of our police chiefs and law enforcement on how to do this and how to do it well. We also made sure that we created a unit that answers questions 24 hours a day, basically, for every law enforcement officer who gets a call and says, hey, this person has a gun, I'm concerned about it. So we have also then taken responsibility off of law enforcement by making sure that we are the office who's petitioning for the ERPO as well. It's more than just saying, hey, let's get rid of these guns or what we're doing. It's also making sure that we interpret and enforce the law and help law enforcement do it correctly. And I just want to also talk for a moment about people who are calling ERPOs in, but maybe this is one of those things that isn't a legitimate call. That's a big problem too. So it's a lot of actual practitioner work, and I've been doing that work for a long time.
Thank you. Next response, Diane Krentz.
In a rare moment, I'm going to actually compliment Mary Moriarty for how she's been handling that, because I do think that those orders are good. I know that it's only one attorney doing it. Frankly, with the number of those, I'm not really sure that there needs to be more than one attorney, because I know where the other gaps in the office are that need to be filled by attorneys. I think as long as it's constitutional, and doesn't violate someone's Second Amendment rights. And I believe that Cedric probably did a pretty good job with writing that, because it hasn't been challenged here in Minnesota. So I think that they're very useful, and I would just continue that same program.
Thank you. And the final response from Cedric Frazier.
I would agree. Hennepin County Attorney's Office has done a great job with this. They've dedicated staff to training with law enforcement and with the community to let people know that the tool exists, how to access the tool, and we've seen great outcomes because of that. And we've seen situations where mass shootings have been prevented, suicides have been prevented, and absolutely domestic violence situations where that type of harm has been prevented. I would continue to lean into that work. I would do kind of a purview, a survey, looking at the number of cases that are coming in to determine if we need to put more staff toward that. But the way Hennepin County is handling it, and this is important, one thing we learned in other states that put their red flag laws in place, the reason it didn't do as great early on is because the lack of knowing that the tool existed. Hennepin County has done a great job of making sure that people know the tool exists. And that staff actually communicates with anyone around the state that wants to have that information and model what Hennepin County is doing, and I will continue that work because it saves lives.
Thank you. That will conclude our question and answer portion of tonight, and we'll move to the closing statements. Candidates will now have up to 1 minute for their closing remarks. And for the camera person, we're going to jump to that last column that says CR for the order. And the first closing remarks will come from Hao Wen.
Hennepin County right now needs a person who has lived and work experiences of the community that it touches. I know what it's like to struggle with English. I know what it's like to have a single mother raising a kid in a trailer park. I know what it's like to have a mentally ill brother who suffers from schizophrenia. I know what it's like to raise a kid who is an LGBTQ person. I understand what it's like to walk down a mile-long driveway as a police officer not knowing if you're going to come home again or not. I understand what it's like to hold someone and say, hey, we're going to go in and look at me, I got you, when your worst perpetrator has raped you, hurt you, and did all those things. I understand what it's like to look at the defendant and wrap them around with the Constitution, because that defendant has been my family member. I have the experience to do the work and the managerial experience as well in the second largest county attorney's office right now. And I have the lived experience to make sure that I understand that every single person who comes through our criminal justice system, I've gone through most of those things. So for me, more than ever, we shouldn't be all the way here or all the way here. We have to get back to doing the work and understanding the people that we touch. So I would humbly be asking for your support to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next closing remarks, Cedric Fraser.
First, thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on, and to my opponents for sharing this space tonight, and to the audience for engaging in our democracy, one of the most important things that is under threat right now by our federal government. If this election were simply about who was had the most prosecutorial experience, we could take out our calculators. We wouldn't need a convention. We wouldn't need a primary. We wouldn't need a general election. We could figure that out. But it's not about that. Hennepin County has not elected a traditional career prosecutor to this role since 1970s, because voters understand this job is bigger than that. That's why I won the DFL endorsement with over 61% of the vote. Someone who leads with courage and urgency is needed in this office, while keeping the politics away from the dedicated line attorneys who do this work every single day. This isn't time to regress back to business as usual. We're not going back to that. Donald Trump will not allow us to go back to that, and he's got another 2.5 years left to continue to try to punish the state of Minnesota. We need a leader ready to fight back and move forward. I am that leader, and I'm asking for your support to vote early tomorrow or by August 11th.
Thank you. Next closing remarks, Anders Folk.
Yeah, thank you all for being here tonight. Thanks to the League, thanks to the Hennepin County Bar Association, and thanks to everybody sitting up here for being in this race. This has obviously been a really meaningful evening. The role of the county attorney is a significant role, and you've already heard, chief prosecutor for the county, chief lawyer for this $3 billion enterprise. This is the person where the buck stops for every serious criminal case in Hennepin County. I've spent my entire career doing criminal justice work. I have been a U.S. Marine lawyer. I have been a federal prosecutor. I have done work at the county attorney's office in the juvenile division as a very young lawyer. And I've been a public defender, taking on cases in the federal system for folks who couldn't pay for their own legal services. I will tell you that experience will inform every day of my job as the county attorney. I talked about compassion and consequence. You need a county attorney who, based on their hard work and experience, understands how to set the right strategy to ensure that we are doing our best to ensure compassion and consequence in every case. I could not be more excited to take on this job and represent you as your county attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Next closing remarks from Matt Pelican.
I said this has been the most difficult year in Minnesota in my lifetime, but it has also been a moment of tremendous bravery and courage. It's been a moment for ordinary Minnesotans, and I mean that in the best sense possible. It's people showing up with compassion and courage, demanding justice for their neighbors. This is a moment where Minnesotans deserve leaders who are worthy of the courage of the ordinary Minnesotans, blowing whistles, driving meals to families, driving kids to school. I have never been more inspired by the courage of those neighbors and friends in Minnesota And I believe that in this race, it's not just experience, it's also judgment, and it's courage. And it's a belief in what kind of future we want for Hennepin County. Do we believe that hope is stronger than fear? Do we believe that democracy is stronger than fascism? Do we believe that progressive communities have to be safe, nice, thriving communities? And if you believe that we need both safety and justice, I hope to earn your support for Hennepin County Attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final closing remarks from Diane Krantz.
I'm the only candidate here who's ever prosecuted a crime in Hennepin County. I think it's time that a career prosecutor run that office, someone who has done the day-to-day work, met with thousands of victims, and handled hundreds of thousands of cases. It's time to do that because the office has become politicized, and I never, once as a prosecutor, made a decision for political reasons. If I'm elected, I make one promise to everyone in Hennepin County, that the politicization of that office ends the second I take the oath of office. We've seen what happens when politics comes into play in the criminal justice system, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or here, and that needs to change. We have either no justice or unequal justice. Justice is not partisan, and I will lead the office in the same way I did every single day, following the evidence and the law, working with all partners, including the police, being compassionate with the victims, and moving forward with policies that make Hennepin County safer.
Thank you. Well, that kind of wraps up the candidate portion. We will have some closing remarks from the League of Women Voters, but I thank you all for the time and your thoughtful responses.
Thank you.
At least this time you didn't give me a big hit.
Thank you. On behalf of the 10 Leagues of Women Voters in Hennepin County and the Hennepin County Bar Association, I thank the candidates for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve our community. We hope this forum has helped you as voters make an informed decision with regard to the August 11th primary election, and I thank our moderator, Florence Sprague. We thank you, the audience, for your participation in this forum and the democratic process. We challenge you to think about what you can do to further civic dialogue about the issues and get your friends and neighbors to participate in this important election. Nonpartisan information about candidates and about voting is available at vote411.org, which is a National League of Women Voters website. It goes live on June 26th, tomorrow. County election offices will be open for early in-person voting from June 26th through August 10th. However, many city election offices will be open only for direct balloting. Direct balloting is where you vote early, but you get to put your ballot in the ballot counter instead of an envelope. Anyway, direct balloting runs from July 24 to August 10th, so please check your city's election website to make sure you don't show up to vote early and it's not available yet. But the county and Minneapolis, I know, are open the entire time. A video recording of this forum will be available unedited for viewing on the League of Women Voters Minneapolis website, lwvmpls.org, and other sites. Editing of this video is authorized only for official media reporting. Footage cannot be used in campaign publicity. The recording is the property of LWV Minneapolis. For those of you who live in Hennepin County Commissioner District 2, which includes all of Golden Valley and Medicine Lake, a small part of southeast Plymouth and northeast Minneapolis, we will hold a candidate forum on Tuesday, July 21st. And if you live in Hennepin County Commissioner District 3, which is a part of Minneapolis and all of St. Louis Park, I believe, there will be a forum on July 13th. Check league websites for more information on those events. Now, I'd like to again thank our candidates, and please vote. Your vote is your voice and your power. And thank you all for attending. Have a lovely evening.